As usual, I'd like to give thanks to everyone for posting their questions and making this video possible. Please like the video by hitting the like icon, and if you haven't subscribed yet, you can do that as well. Okay, let's get started. In that life, making money was always the aim, right? Where did the scoundrel tendency begin? Or was it always there? And just not the main ratio of the mix of people involved. It seems like so many of the more recent fold seem to be riddled with inconsistency or outright fraud to their very own crew. For starters, making money is the aim of most people in all aspects of life, not only the mob. As for the scoundrel mentality, in every basket of apples, you'll find your rotten ones. But when it comes to the mob, it's more about learned behavior. Underhandedness runs rampant. Nonetheless, the majority of that behavior comes from people who are just that, scoundrels. Does a newly inducted member who has a family member who's a captain get placed in that family member's crew? I don't know about other families, but for a time, the Lucchese family did the opposite. For instance, brothers were placed in different crews, and that changed following the transition of the administration. Can an incarcerated member sponsor someone for membership? Is it required that a sponsor be present at the induction ceremony? If a guy's in prison, naturally, he would have to send word out to the street if he wanted to put somebody up, and he can only recommend, and obviously wouldn't attend the ceremony while in prison. Typically, the person who's sponsoring you is present at the ceremony. Take my case, for instance. Little Joey, who sponsored me, happened to be at the ceremony. But if for some reason he couldn't attend, our captain Big John was there. I kind of know where this person's going with this question, but let's entertain it anyway, and I'll answer the question with the question. Would someone be considered a rat if they sat down with the government but purposely gave them false or misleading information? First, let me say, I truly love how civilians are infatuated with using the word rat. Anyway, here's my question and my answer. If you catch your wife in bed with another guy, will the false and misleading information she purposely gives you not make her a low-life cheat? Is it possible the mob could rebound from its decline, in your opinion? And is human trafficking of minors against the rules? You have to look at the mob's decline like a snowball rolling down a hill. It doesn't lessen and only becomes larger. The mob's problem, aside from all the mistakes they keep making, is the amount of active members and associates who are secretly working with the FBI. Take the Lucchese family, for example. Let's say they have a high-level meeting about this very subject, and someone mentions, Panisi keeps saying that he was told our family has the most FBI sources. Meanwhile, one of the trusted people at that meeting is secretly an FBI informant. So where are they going? How are they rebounding from that? As far as human trafficking of minors, I would say that's a moral rule, and I've never heard of anyone involved in something like that. Was teenagers in your time on the street ever drawn to the Mafia way of life or doing small jobs for mobsters? Unfortunately, there were a lot of young kids who were drawn to that life, and the mob's known for using people, and who better to use than some naive kid? If a guy turns down being proposed, is he judged or mistreated differently? I don't believe so. And the only way he'd be treated differently is by remaining an associate. The choice is his. And I know of a few people who turned it down. I wish I was one of them. To your knowledge, has any made member have a child or other family member in law enforcement? There are a lot of guys who have family in law enforcement. It's a normal thing. The next question is in regard to a video I once posted. I'll add a link to that down below in the description. Did you feel that it was inappropriate for Dominic Pilati to not only be involved in an issue between associates of another family, but also being armed at that meeting? Not at all. At the time, I wasn't straightened out. But had I been, then it would have been an issue if he brought a pistol. Dominic, being a Gambino member, was there just in case I showed up with somebody. But I came alone by myself. Keep in mind, this is the street, and pistols are a part of that. I had a knife, but prior to showing up, I met with Anthony Guzzo and told him to get me a pistol, which he didn't. So I too would have had a pistol at the meeting. The meeting for me was unnecessary. There was absolutely no need for me to be there as I had nothing to do with it, but it's just typical Bronx mentality. Here's another essential point. A lot of viewers want to know why Brooklyn and the Bronx don't get along. And this is the perfect example. But let me take that further. If Brooklyn guys called the guys from the Bronx to a meeting and the Brooklyn guys brought pistols, plastic, and a butcher knife set like they did, people were not walking out of that meeting. We didn't create a scene for a movie, put it that way. Can soldiers and associates under the same Skyper act in the same illicit segments, or do they need to be different to avoid internal disputes? I answered this person back jokingly and said I wasn't sure what a Skyper is. I knew what he meant. He meant skipper. He's Portuguese, and his English is not too good, which is understandable. If by illicit segments you're referring to crimes, a crew, which includes a captain and his soldiers, often work together, but for the most part, operate independently. Each guy in the crew has his own thing, rackets that he's involved in. With that said, internal disputes are very common. Do you think the Mafia will abandon street smarts and recruit new members with business knowledge and more sophisticated crimes like internet scams and money laundering? Well, if you've been watching my videos, I've been saying this already took place. Recruiting businessmen is not a bad move. Where the move becomes bad is where you turn them from associates into members, in my opinion. Is there a moment of regret you hold for a specific sit-down of the past, something you wish you would have done or said differently? Not really anything I've said specifically. In one particular sit-down, I would have prevented Johnny Sideburns from interfering or rather sabotaging a sit-down that went in our favor. But the past is the past, right? If I could go back in time and change the past, that wouldn't be on my list of things to change. When you got out of prison, what was the Italian meal you were looking forward to having the most? It wasn't one specific thing. It was everything. But at the time, I really was craving pastries and cake for some reason. And before going out to eat, I stopped at a bakery and bought a cake and some pastries. As a matter of fact, that was on June 15, 2007, 17 years ago, which is crazy because it don't seem that long ago. Could Mr. Favara, Gotti's neighbor, have been safe somewhere else in North America if he had fled in time and moved away before he disappeared? Or do you think eventually the Gambinos would have caught up with him? As most people know, John Favara was the neighbor who unfortunately hit and killed 12-year-old Frank Gotti, who was riding a mini bike at the time, on March 18, 1980. 3 months later in June, Favara disappeared and has never been seen again. Had he left the Howard Beach area and possibly relocated to another state, I think he'd still be alive, or at least wouldn't have met the end that he did. The circumstances, coupled with emotions that naturally were running high, put Favara in jeopardy. For the sake of peace, he should have just packed up his family and moved. I'm sure when he was being abducted, that thought crossed his mind. What took place was two tragedies, with the loss of a 12-year-old boy being the hardest to deal with. I don't think we say this enough when we speak of these things, but may they both rest in peace. Let me quickly remind everyone of the super thanks icon found underneath this video, which helps keep this channel going and making videos. And for the final question, was there anybody that was part of that life that you thought, this guy's not made for this and should leave if they get a chance? There were a few who were very nice guys, but in my opinion, not made for the life. And I'll add to that. Not long after being straightened out, I thought the same for myself, and I'll explain. It wasn't necessarily not being made for the life. I knew the life very well and was more than capable acting any way possible when need be. But after seeing firsthand all the underhandedness, among other negative aspects, especially the phony way in which a lot of guys acted, I knew I wasn't like them. I quickly learned this in 2013, but I didn't plan an escape. I carried on for the following 5 years, just being me, doing the opposite of what I viewed as being dishonorable. There are many people that I've dealt with, guys in other Bogatas, who may be listening and know exactly how I carried myself, and they respected me for it. There are people, trolls in particular, in the past that made comments such as, "You weren't meant for that life," or "You were a mistake." Number one, I pay zero mind to such comments, especially by the people they're coming from. But although the comments are supposed to be insults, they're actually compliments. Here's why. I was too good of a person to be associated with lowlifes who prey on the weak and believe in strength in numbers, like a gang, and turn on each other all the time by means of treachery. So absolutely I was a mistake and not meant for that life, a life that lost its foundation and no longer follows the rules, where honor and respect have long been replaced with greed and disrespect. I always said, and will continue to say, they did me a favor.